Hello, welcome back to our NeuroThursday. And yes, we are here again. 3 weeks ago, we were here to talk about autonomic nervous system. Again, we're going to talk about the autonomic nervous system. We're going down lower, deeper into functional neurology. Of course, this is always just a very short look at what I'm doing in my everyday practice and what we're teaching at our academy. And of course, if you want to have more information, we still have our seminar number 1 out free on YouTube to look at. Download the script. We have worked the thing over and we're going to have it available quite soon. I don't know, a couple of weeks, the new version to look at and to scan through and to work with, of course. Because functional neurology can be very, very interesting because there's a lot of things that can be explained through functional neurology or through neurology that might not be explained by something else, by biochemistry or biomechanics, etc. So absolutely, for me, I could not live without it, and that's why I'm talking about it all the time. And I'm talking about it now 3 weeks after we did our last NeuroThursday, and I will be talking about it again very soon. In 4 weeks, NeuroThursday, we also have some online courses coming up in English, and we're also going to be teaching in English very soon, very likely, well, not that soon, probably in September or the beginning of October in Copenhagen. That's at least what we plan. So if you want to stay updated on that, you can send us an email and say, well, let me know, keep me posted. So what are we going to talk today? Do we have some listeners? Yes, we do. Hello, welcome. And I'm very happy that you're joining us here on Instagram. And of course, we're also live on Zoom. We're recording everything. You can watch it on Instagram TV. If you don't have time to watch the whole thing now, you can also watch it on our YouTube channel. So we're going to have everything, or we have everything available. I think this is episode or part 19. I'm not sure. I always not sure. I'm not that good with numbers. Well, in neurology, you don't really need that much to do with, you don't have that much to do with numbers anyway. So what we're going to talk about today is more the abdominal part of the nervous system. Of course, you could just talk days and days, and we have a whole seminar about not only the abdominals, but the autonomic nervous system in the thoracic part and also in the abdominal part. Just want to take a quick glance at it. I want to start off with some stories from my practice with people who had abdominal problems but did not have abdominal symptoms. So that's, of course, what you can have. Neurology is tricky because the more connected a system is, the more integrated a system is, the more likely it is that you have a problem in one part of the system and the symptom in another part of the system. That you only understand if you know functional neurology or neuroanatomy. So here's one patient coming to my practice. This was a couple of years ago already, and she had ear pain, severe ear pain on her right side. So she's been, of course, to the specialist to look at inside the ear, and I think they even did an MRI scan to look if there's something inside the brain. Of course, you have to do that because if you have somebody coming with severe ear pain, that might be something very severe happening in the ear or in the brain or wherever the problem then is, but nothing. So no tumor, no infection inside the ear or anything like that. So everything was clear, it was just painful. So this is where I love neurology, and this is not even like functional neurology in a way it is, but it's just neurology, it's just knowing the anatomy. So what was going on? This patient, of course, asking a little further, what was she telling me about? She was telling me about her surgery she has had with her gallbladder, also with some complications. Now, what does the gallbladder have to do with the ear? Well, quite easily, actually. The ear is innervated by a nerve coming from C3, so then this part also has a nerve going down to the diaphragm. That's the phrenic nerve, and this nerve, some say it is, some say it's not, but there is a connection between phrenic nerve, the upper part of the glands, gallbladder, for example, and then going up to the neck and to the ear. So there's still discussion as I read about, is this really the phrenic nerve going into the upper parts of the abdomen also, or those more like spinal nerves that are like kind of going together with the phrenic nerve? But even if it's only spinal nerves going together with the phrenic nerve, there is There is people who I've talked to who say, well, if a nerve is connected to another nerve also just because it's close by, there can be crosstalk, which can affect the nerve, the other nerve that it's walking along with. So, what did we do? Well, we integrated. We worked with this part of the body, not this part of the body. There's no problem with the ear. There was just a projection, so it was a pain projection. And of course, if you ask somebody what's going on, what happened before, and you go back a little bit, very often you can already find out what probably the problem is. Of course, if you don't think this problem has anything to do with the symptom, because you can't put together the dots, well, then it might not have to do with it. Well, then you won't treat that. You will treat something else. But this was very, very obvious, very simple if you know neuroanatomy, and also then very simple to treat, because all we did is we tested all the nerves in the skin, because of course she had a scar from the surgery, and deeper tissue, the myofascial tissues, and then also deeper you can affect also the intra-abdominal nerves through pushing on it or through vibration, some kind of sensory input into the nerve to see how the body reacts. And of course the body reaction, we always measure that with a change in muscle function. I like to use then muscles, not just one muscle in the body testing everything, but muscles that are related to that part of the body or to that part of the nervous system, and see how the sensory motor system is reacting to the afferent input or to the input you're putting into that part of the body. So there it is, a whole bunch of mistakes going on through the skin, through the myofascial, through the deeper layers of tissue, deeper layers of the nervous system. And we integrated that, and I've shown that quite a few times, and I will show that in the future again. Today we just want to talk about it. Integrate that by activating the nervous system somewhere where then if you apply the stimulus will not cause a dysfunction of any kind. So very often this is in some part of the central nervous system, not always central nervous system, where that is connected to. So it could be that you activate the spinal cord at the level of C3, or it could be that you activate the brainstem or something like that, where there's a very likely connection between the two systems. So integrate that, and the pain of the ear is gone after one treatment. This is what I love about neuroanatomy. This is what I love because it's just so obvious. It's just nothing outrageous. It's nothing spooky. It's just anatomy. That's all it is. And if you only look at a gland without looking at the cables, of course you don't understand. Say, well, the gland is here and the other problem is there. Well, if you look at the cable, where the cables are going and where they're like connected to each other or where they interact, like in C3, well, there it is. Very, very easy. Another story of a patient coming in, also not abdominal issues, but an abdominal problem, is a patient with mild to moderately severe palpitations, skips of heartbeat, things like that. Very disturbing for her also when she comes to rest, when she's sleeping. Of course, she's had an episode of severe stress with somebody dying, and this was all very likely the cause of the dysfunction in the autonomic nervous system. So looking at all the different aspects of heart innervation, of course, the ganglia, the cervical ganglia, the vagus nerve, we looked at all that. There was a bit of something going on right there, but didn't resolve all the palpitations. It made it calmer, so the nervous system was working better, but did not go away. So then we went to the next step and looked at the abdominal part of the nervous system and see if there's something there. And yes, there was. In the upper abdominal part, more like the stomach area, there was some significant dysfunction there. And of course, then you might want to ask, well, what does the upper abdominal have to do with the heart? And of course, then again, you have to understand the innervation of the heart and the innervation of the upper abdomen to understand that there could be an interaction. I myself had an issue like that. So for me, that was very familiar because when I was like in my early 20s, I had severe palpitations. And I went to the cardiologist, of course, and he checked my heart and he said, you're all fine, you're a young man, you're very healthy, you do enough sports, so there's no problem there. So just do maybe some more sports and relax. So that was the advice. And I was asking because I had noticed that I had also stomach issues at that time, if that could be connected, and the answer was Probably not. Maybe it's just the stomach is like pushing up because there's like bloating or something. But that was not the case. There was no bloating. It was just an irritation, and that correlated. The heart function correlated with the level of irritation in the stomach or in the upper abdomen. So, me being interested in neurology at some point then, of course I looked at it and I saw, well, most of the textbooks, or a lot of textbooks are wrong because they just say, well, the innervation of the heart is T1 to T4 if you take the sympathetic innervation. But if you look at a better textbook, it will say, well, it's not only T1 to T4, it's more like T1 to T7. So T1 to T4 is like the ventricles, or the ventricle innervation. T5 to T7 is the so now I'm missing the word, the not ventricle. So the upper part, the atrium of the heart, is innervated from T5 to T7. Say, well, that's kind of interesting because why would the upper part of the heart be innervated lower in the sympathetic term than the ventricles? And that's because the heart starts like this and then it turns upside down, and here we go. It innervates, it's innervated, the top part is innervated from lower, and you have a crosstalk in the area of T5 to T7, which goes to the upper abdomen parts to innervate the stomach and the gallbladder and all these glands. So here it is, very simple again. So I looked at that, treated that with that woman I was just talking about, and here the palpitations were gone. So, I mean, that's the beauty of functional neurology, that's the beauty of neuroanatomy, understanding, giving the people an explanation why they have that. That happens to me on an everyday basis, and of course there's also other reasons where you can find out something, but neurology to me is the best way to explain a lot of things that would otherwise be not explainable through biochemistry or through biomechanics or all these other things. Of course, then very fast it's, well, it must be psychosomatic. Well, at least we're in the nervous system, but it's not psychosomatic. A lot of times it's not. It's neurofunctional problem. Okay, so let's talk about the abdomen now. And thank you for watching. And if you're not able to watch this all the way, of course you can watch this on Instagram TV or on YouTube, as I said before. So let's talk about the abdomen. Let's talk about, and we have to talk about the vagus nerve, of course. So one of the things we do when we look at the vagus nerve, of course, there's a lot of afferent input going into the vagus nerve. And the first thing you have to know, of course, there's not two vagus nerves, there's four. So you have the one part that's coming out of the dorsomotor nucleus, and there's one part of the nucleus ambiguous. So these two left and two right, the ambiguous more going to the heart, the nucleus dorsalis nervi vagus is more innervating, is more for the abdomen. That's the unmyelinated part of the nerve, but that also has fibers going to the heart, so that can cause like a slow heartbeat, which can cause death in old people and very young people, or newborns. So that's always a danger of a slow heartbeat causing death, which is caused by vagal activity through the old part of the vagus nerve. So one thing we always look at, we don't quite differentiate those four or two parts of the nerve through some kind of special treatment. What we like to do is we like to just treat all parts of the vagus nerve, or look at all parts of the vagus nerve to find out which part is affected. And one thing you always need to consider is the path the vagus nerve is taking down into the abdomen. So it's a long nerve, it's going all the way down to the colon, and the nerve is going through the thorax, going along the neck and coming out of the skull. So one thing I find a lot, I really find a lot, I might want to say 50% of vagal dysfunction is caused by cranial dysfunction. So maybe that's too much, maybe it's only 40% or 30%, but it's quite a lot. So first thing is always look at the head. So I'm coming out of medicine, we don't look at the head really, if it's broken, yes, of course, or if it's a neurological problem, we look at the head or something like that, stroke, yes. But if somebody comes with abdominal issues, you don't look at the head in medicine. So here, I'm doing osteopathy and I'm learning about all these mechanics in the head that are supposed to be there, like the temporal bone going in and out like this. And so I got an understanding of mechanics, and of course what that could be doing with nerves going through the skull or going from inside to the outside of the skull to the body. So, but the explanation, of course, was I don't know if that's really true. I think there's a certain mechanic going on in the head to regulate pressure or whatever, but if we could palpate it, I don't think we're palpating mechanics. I think we're palpating something else. So, but that aside, neurofunctional. So we look at the sutures. We look at the function of the nerve, of the trigeminal nerve, basically, most of it. The back part is more innervated maybe by vagus. That's also not known that well if it's really the vagus, but it's also C2 and C3 going into the back part of the skull. So we're looking at those nerves, and we're looking at the function of those nerves because they, if there's a dysfunction in nerves, maybe through a head trauma, that will cause different kinds of, or dysfunction in the tension of the tissue. Could be muscle, it could be dura, could be some kind of fascia. And this, of course, if it's like around a nerve, can cause a mechanical problem along the nerve. So here I am moving my head all day, so there's always, or could always be, a pressure or a mechanic irritation of the vagus nerve. So this is really important. Of course, it's not only the skull, but the skull seems to play an important role. And even if you're looking at the skull and it might be C2 or C3, something going on, of course, that's interconnected through the nerves. So looking in that part, at least, is in my view and our view very, very important, because there's a lot of dysfunctions, vagal dysfunction. So people coming in with a bad, with bloating, with bad digestion, with abdominal pain, with irritation, also with a lack of energy, things like that, because digestion is not working really well, because the stomach is not working really well, it's not splitting up the proteins into amino acids very well. All that might be due to a vagal problem, and the vagal problem might not be a vagal problem in terms of a communication between the brain and the abdomen, but because the vagal nerve is irritated along its way. And it's not only the skull is very often, in my experience, maybe it's only here in the south of Germany, it's because we have a lot of snow and ice and people slip and fall on the head. That could be the reason for that. Also the neck, of course, whiplash injuries, so the nerve running through the neck tissue here could be irritated, and then every time you move your head left and right, the nerve could get stressed and then cause a dysfunction, but not here, because you're not feeling the nerve here. The nerve is responsible for what's going on right here or in the chest, of course, but in the abdomen that can cause a dysfunction of digestion. So, of course, you have to know that, and of course, for people who are doing osteopathy, this might not be so new, but the way we treat it, of course, then again is easy, because we just stimulate the nerve and see which kind of stimulation will cause a dysfunction in the nerve, and it will cause a dysfunction in the sensory motor system, and use that to show us, to guide the way to which part of the nervous system needs to be activated so that dysfunction will stop. So that's what we do. I've shown this a couple of times, and I will show that, and again, of course, how we do that. So the technique is very easy. The harder part is remembering or finding all the aspects that could be. So you're not only looking at one part of the body where the symptoms are, but you're looking at all kinds of parts of the body, especially guiding you along the nerves and going through the passages of the nerves into the central nervous system, of course, looking at the communication from those parts of the brain to other parts of the body to see if that communication is working. So that's a very important aspect of abdominal work, looking at the cranial nerve 10, of course, and its way to the abdomen to see if there's any problem being caused especially through the skull. So one thing we also always want to look at, because that's like that's not the reason why we look at it, we have to look at that, is the enteric nervous system. So if we're talking about the autonomics, we talk about the sympathetic and parasympathetic very often. we don't know if we're going to be calling that all along the next 50 years, because there's science that shows that like the parasympathetic of the sacrum might not be so parasympathetic after all, could have a lot of sympathetic aspects, and also the other parts, that division between sympathetic, parasympathetic with antagonistic function is not really true, and it could be that in the end we talk about cranial output, thoracic output, and sacral output of the autonomic nervous system. So besides those, if we stay with the terms of sympathetic, parasympathetic, or if we use the terms cranial output or cranial outflow, thoracic outflow, sacral outflow, there's one more part of the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, which is mainly inside the abdomen. That's why I want to talk about it. It's the enteric nervous system. So enteric nervous system, some call it the brain, the gut brain or whatever, and some people claim that it has more neurons than the brain. I don't really know about that. It has a lot of neurons, that's true, and the gut feeling is like something that comes from the gut and is like projected to the brain. Well, ask a neuroscientist. All the neuroscientists I've read about this issue, they said that's not true. That's projected maybe into that area. So if your gut feeling is not the gut brain telling you what to do, it's your brain projecting it into the vagal or spinal aspects of your body here in the abdomen, causing some kind of feeling that might guide you to do something which you can't decide with your head, so, or with your logic thinking. So that's the gut feeling, but it's not, I don't believe that this is thinking and telling you what to do. So, but it's a very important nervous system. And why do we have so many nerves? Because it's a long tube, and there's a lot of things going on in terms of transportation, and also, of course, regulation of lymphatic tissue and all these kinds of things. So basically what it's doing, it's like if you have a bolus in your gut, then it squeezes here and it opens up here, so it moves this way, and then it squeezes here and opens up there. So that you need a lot of nerves, because you need to regulate that all along the passage. So what's very important? No, well, this is not the only reason. Keep coming back to that, but my school, for example, if you talk about allergies, so here's somebody not coming with abdominal issues, but they're coming with allergies. So here again, we're outside the abdomen with in terms of symptoms. My school said that allergies could originate in the abdomen, and that could be due to bad digestion. And one of the aspects of bad digestion is protein digestion, not being digested completely, broken down into amino acids, then being partly whole as a protein, causing one thing is causing immune reactions of the immune system. The other thing is it's causing foulness. That's how you call it. So toxic gases, H2S. So those are very toxic gases that can be caused by maldigestion. And of course, then if you have a leaky gut and that's going into your bloodstream or into the cells of the colon or something, then it might cause an immune reaction in the cells or in the colon wall. And also if it goes into blood, it can cause a reaction there. And that again can cause a cross reaction to other things coming in through your nose. So here you have an allergy. So one of the things, that's what I want to get to, is one of the things, is first of all, you have to look at the digestive system. And one of the aspects, and I think that's not unknown, but what would be done then is look at the microbiome and try to fix that, or see if there's enough pancreatic juice or pancreatic enzymes, and maybe fix that, alter that. And but one of the aspects is the biomechanics of the digestive system. So here you have a long tube, and you have some sphincters like in the mouth and in your anus, and between that you have the cardia and the pylorus, and you have the ileocecal valve, and you have the Houston valve. So these are, in our view, very important to check. And I don't know how many functional modalities really check all these different sphincters and the interaction, the synchronization of the sphincters. For example, you have a synchronization between pylorus and ileocecal valve, and a synchronization between cardia and the Houston valve. So these need to be synchronized, and you can test that. We have test protocols to test that. to make sure that, like, if you have something in your stomach, it's not just the pylorus is going to open up and then you have half digested content going into the small intestine, causing all kinds of issues of maldigestion or then immune reaction. So this is one thing we look at very closely, and not only the sphincters, but also the interaction, the coordination between the esophagus and the stomach and the small intestine and the large intestine. And so that the transportation is coordinated, because if you have all the right pH in your stomach and all the right enzymes and all that, everything you need, but it's been shoved along before it's done cooking, I want to say, that's not going to be very helpful. So yes, your pancreas has to work and your gallbladder has to work and your stomach has to work. It has to produce acids, enough acids. It has to produce enzymes and all that. But then again, it has to stay there long enough. And if you're eating a whole bunch of protein, and I'm not talking about amino acids that are already broken up, I'm talking about protein that you have to break up, it takes much longer than if you're just eating some fruit. So fruit just goes through really fast, and amino acids or protein takes quite a long time to be digested, broken up. So that needs to be managed, and if that's not working, you have a bad digestion, which will cause a whole bunch of other problems with your digestive system, with your detoxification system, with your immune system. So very important, not only microbiome, yes, probiotics, and all these things might be valuable, but not if you have a mechanical problem. And that can only be fixed through, in my view, functional neurology. So, of course, you have to look at the vagus. There, it's also taking a role in regulating that. There is reflexes within the enteric nervous system. There are reflexes between the enteric nervous system and the spinal cord, and there's reflexes between the enteric system and the central nervous system or the brain. So all of these areas have to be checked, especially those like the coordination within the enteric nervous system to really get a good digestive function. So if that is done, then you have a good chance of having a good digestive function. If what you eat is good for you, and if what you eat, you chew it enough, of course, and if what you eat is also somehow healthy, has some nutrients in it, and then you're all set. So that's a very important aspect of our of what we do, checking the enteric nervous system for optimal digestion, and of course all the things that are go along with that. So what I see very often, because a lot of times people come in and they're not like complaining about digestive issues, or they're not complaining about this or that, they might be coming in because of back pain or something like that. So when we look, we always look in an integrated way, seeing, okay, here's the problem, so where does it lead us to? Which part of the nervous system is affected? So it could be autonomic, even if it's a knee problem, it could be autonomic. So then you might end up in the abdomen, you might end up treating a ganglion or the vagus nerve or the sympathetic branch or the sympathetic or the autonomic connection to the brain, into certain parts of the brain that are more autonomic than sensory motor. So then you see that the problem is not a sensory motor problem, it's more an autonomic problem, and you can treat that. And of course then people always come back and they say, well, could it be that I see my knees working better and I have less pain or no pain, and could it be that my digestive system also improved? And I say, yes, of course, we actually treated that because we were treating the autonomic part of the innervation, and that will take the abdomen or the colon or whatever along. So we can't divide it into anything, and that's something I hear quite a lot. So, well, I didn't really have an issue there, but I see that it's better. So it's more regular, it's less reactive to certain foods or something like that. Even I have kids or people coming in with like, say, might have food allergies. Allergy might turn out to be a dysfunction of the enteric nervous system. So that could go away even if you're not like treating the immune system, but you're making the system work more smoothly, better, which will affect the other systems also. So that's like everyday basis. So I will keep talking about neurology. I will keep talking about functional neurology. Sometimes I have a feeling there's still so many people out there, whether it be medical doctors or other practitioners, who just keep staring at biochemistry, microbiomes and all that, and they're dumping a whole bunch of stuff on that, which is not wrong. I'm not saying that. And then they wonder why the person's not improving. I say, well, have you looked at the regulatory system? So a lot of people doing functional medicine just by adding food supplements. I said, fine, that's good. I do that too if it's necessary. But a supplement will not give you the full benefit if the nervous system's not working right. So functional medicine needs to take all these things into account, and we need to look at the part that's regulating function, nervous system. So that's it for today. A short, quick view into how we look at the abdominal nervous system. I didn't talk about the external abdominal system. I want to talk about that at some point. The nerves that go into the muscles and regulate your core function, your trunk, your muscle activity for breathing, for stability, all these things. It's all coming up. So stay put, and I would be happy if you join me again. And I will now go into a Zoom chat. So if you want to join us on Zoom, we have the link on our website. You can do that anytime. And I'm going to be chatting with you for a couple of minutes after this this monologue, putting it out there. Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming back again and again. Spread the word. Functional neurology. That's, for me, that's the future of medicine. So I'm going to just say hello and goodbye, and see you next time. In, I think, 4 weeks, we'll be back with more.